On a cold, foggy evening in 1998, I got my first copy of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. It has been 24 years since, and the Gita remains my all-time favorite book. I am not saying this as a Krishna devotee, but from a logical and rational perspective. Let me begin from the beginning. Before reading the Gita, I had read the Mahabharata and Ramayana in childhood. I had also seen Doordarshan serials Mahabharata and Ramayana. I had also seen the 3 episodes on the Gita in TV serial Mahabharata. But these memories were not very fresh. Before reading the Gita, I knew that at the beginning of the Gita, Pandava Prince Arjun refuses to fight as he would have to kill his loved ones in battle. And I knew that Lord Krishna convinces Arjun by the end of the Gita to pick up his weapons. So my initial impression before reading the Gita was that Lord Krishna in the Gita would be talking mostly about why Arjun should fight with his cousins and relatives. But I was disappointed. Lord Krishna dismisses Arjun's personal concerns of fighting his loved ones in just a few verses in chapter 2 and moves on to many other topics. As I read on, I realized that Lord Krishna was talking about something much bigger than Arjun's personal battle. But what was Krishna talking about exactly? I had no clue. That is how my first reading of the Gita went. So I kept the Gita down and started thinking about it. 3 things came to my head. In many verses in chapter 2, Lord Krishna describes the characteristics of the soul. In many verses in chapters 10 and 11, Lord Krishna describes and demonstrates who he is. In chapters 14, 17 and 18, Lord Krishna talks about the 3 gunas, Satvik, Rajsik and Tamsik. These 3 points, which take up a large part of the book, I could easily remember after my first reading. But what exactly was Lord Krishna trying to say? To know it, I picked up the book again, but this time I kept a pen and diary with me to note down my thoughts as I read the book for the second time. In my 24 years that I have spent with the Gita, I have filled more than 30 diaries with my thoughts arising out of the Gita. By the end of the second reading, it was clear that Lord Krishna was thinking of a mega plan. But to me, it wasn't very clear. Maybe it was because I didn't fully understand the context in which the Gita was spoken. So I made up my mind to reread the Mahabharata, as the Gita is a very small but most important part of the Mahabharata. I also decided to read the Bhagavad Mahapuran, as the life of the principal speaker of the Gita, Lord Krishna, is described in Canto 10. But what was I searching for? To make it clear to myself, I read the Gita 30 times non-stop, and this time I kept a pencil along to underline verses in the Gita that aroused my interest. So with a pencil, pen and diary, I dug deep into the Gita at about 25 years of age. Was 25 years of age too young to read the Gita? Isn't Gita meant for the elderly? No, absolutely not. In fact, I was at the right age to read the Gita. I had started working 3 years back, and the Gita's advice helped me in understanding my karma kshetra better. And 3 years later, I got married and became a grahastha. So the Gita helped me understand life better. Wasn't Lord Krishna's position similar to mine when he spoke the Gita? He was in his workplace and in the middle of his active life at that time. So, if you are 20 years of age or older, you can and should read the Gita. Even though I had studied Sanskrit for 6 years in school, it wasn't good enough that I could make sense of the Gita in Sanskrit. I needed a translated version in English or Hindi. The one that I prefer and recommend is the Srimad Bhagavad Gita of Gita Press Gorakhpur. It is not too costly. Its 2015 edition was priced at Rs 50. It has 432 pages. Let me clarify that nobody has sponsored me for saying this. It has the shlok in Sanskrit. Then the shlok is broken down into smaller words, making it easier for a beginner to pronounce. Then word by word meaning is given in Hindi. The verse can be read in Hindi like this. This is enough. An elaborate explanation is not required. It will only confuse you at the initial stage. Let us go back to my journey with the Gita. After reading the Gita 30 times, I began going through the Mahabharata and Bhagavat Mahapuran. Then, as Lord Krishna and Lord Ram are avatars of Lord Vishnu, I reread the Ramayana and Vishnu Dashavatar. These are very enjoyable stories, and my time passed very quickly. Suddenly, the fog began to lift. I became more and more convinced that Lord Krishna was preparing to implement a grand social plan after the Mahabharata war. And the clue to it lay in the Daivik and Asuric qualities given in chapter 16 of the Gita and the three gunas, Satvik, Rajsik and Tamsik, elaborated in chapters 14, 17 and 18. But a grand social plan has to appear somewhere in Indian history. But to my surprise, it did not. Shockingly, in Indian history, there are no names of persons before 600 BC. All persons before Buddha and Mahavir are dismissed as mythological. So I reread Indian history, ancient, medieval and modern. The Hindu way of life that flourished till the coming of the British in 1700 AD had no roots in Indian history. Seriously, this appeared to be a mistake. The multiple readings of the Gita, Mahabharata, Bhagavat, Ramayana, Dashavatar, Indian history, and intense thinking about it took decades to simplify in my head. Now, let me share the conclusions with you. Earlier in this video, I had said that Lord Krishna dismisses Arjun's personal concerns of fighting his loved ones in just a few verses in chapter 2. But surprisingly, in verse 18.60, Lord Krishna says, even if you don't want to fight now, the conditions around you will soon force you to fight. That got me thinking. To elaborate on the personal conditions of Arjun that would force him to fight, I wrote a book titled Gita, the Complete Argument in 2015. To make it easy for the reader, it contains stories from the Mahabharata and Bhagavat. The links are in the description. On reading world history and other religions, I concluded that the Ramayana and Bhagavat too had a similar historical base. To call those epics mythological was completely wrong. I wrote books on the topic in English and Hindi titled Krishna Not Myth and Krishna nahin mithya, gave a lecture and made YouTube videos in English and Hindi. The links are in the description. If you are a scientist who is dealing with astrophysics, Big Bang, and quantum mechanics, if you are a psychologist pondering over questions of consciousness, and if you are a philosopher wondering if God exists and what his attributes are, then the Gita is the right place to get some inspiration. To think more properly on these aspects, I read about Advait philosophy, the Upanishads, and Brahma Sutra. Thinking on these lines will also shed more light on ideas of God, creation, and soul. After reading the Gita for many years, it is clear that the great book is not only the basis of SanatanDharm, but also of the Indian nation and Hindu civilization. As a great civilization can only be built by improving our personal aspects, societal structures, and work systems, the Gita deals with all three aspects. The tips on improvement that is required in our personal self to be more successful and happy given in the Gita are of interest to everyone. Some of those are given in this video. The link is in the description. The tips in the Gita on improving the society and the system and on how to build a great civilization will interest social thinkers. I have written a book, Who Made India, on this topic. The link is in the description. The aim of the Gita is to move man from being an animal to becoming divine and for society to become Devik or Satvik. I discovered the secret of the Gita the hard way, as somewhere I had to find the way and at other places I had to make the path. But with this video, I have simplified the path for new readers. So go ahead and buy a copy of the Gita today. Earlier, I had made a playlist of my videos on the Gita. Do watch those. If you have any questions or suggestions, do post those in the comments below. Subscribe to my channel for more videos on SanatanDharm and share the link with all your friends. Jai Shri Krishna.